However, we set that aside for just a moment and welcome back to the radio show Representative Scott Cepicky, who's getting ready to get back into caucus meetings and get back into a special session, and wanted to find out from his perspective what we can expect this week. Hello, Scott.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
It's Monday.
Yeah?
It's Monday.
Monday, late August.
Tuesday Eve.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering if all of you, I heard that, by the way.
It's Friday Eve all day long
on
the Mac Murphy Show.
Yeah, see, I blame you on this.
That was from Bell. He told me to do it.
Did he now? Did you, Bell? Is that true, Bell?
Oh,
Bell's shaking his...
He's lying.
Bell shaking his headless bell.
Bell, the committee I have has subpoena power. Be careful. We will put a head to that body.
So we seem to be at loggerheads between the House and the Senate as to how to proceed. The Senate says, here's the three bills. It's 3 of the 5 that were presented by the governor. This is what the governor wanted us to do. We're going to do that, and we're going home. The House is trying to accomplish a little bit more, I guess. At least that's what I hear from the leadership. I talked to Cameron Sexton last week. What do you make of this impasse, and how do you see a way out?
Well, I think what you're going to see, we have a caucus meeting at 1 o'clock, and I would suspect that leadership's going to come in and tell us where the cards are on the table and decide as a caucus where we want to go from here. Do we want to just pass the governor's 3 bills and go home and continue on with our lives and then come back in January with the legislation that we have before us already? Or are we going to double down and stay here and keep trying to work this issue out between the House and the Senate? That's why the speakers and lieutenant governors, that's why they get the big money, that they have to sit down and try to figure this out with the caucus support.
What legislation, to your understanding, and maybe you can speak for yourself or you can speak perhaps for leadership, I don't know if you're able to do that. I'm trying to figure out what bills are of most importance in the House that the Senate is not currently taking up, because that seems to be the issue, right? The House wants to take up some additional legislation, and the Senate says, here's the 3 bills, we're throwing it out there. And I understand that now that some of the legislation that the Senate is offering is being used in a way to try to get the Senate to come back to the table. Is that a fair analysis?
Well, I don't want to speak for our leadership.
I understand.
That'd be outside of my purview and what I should do. What I can tell you is this, is everybody believes their legislation is important. And I think we've got 29 bills on the House floor. We've gotten through about half of them. We got about 16, 17 more to go. And that's what we'll take up today in session and continue on with that legislation. I think there's a lot of good things that is happening in Tennessee right now. If I could have a little latitude, I'd like to talk about a 3-part plan we're working on to protect our schools. It's pretty simple. The first thing is we passed at the end of special session, or at the end of regular session, we passed the SRO bill, which is $140 million to provide an SRO paid for by the state and the taxpayers across the state of Tennessee for every public and private school to make sure that we have law enforcement in every school. Representative Rudd has a bill that cleared our committee on Wednesday that said that we're going to expand that to school safety officers for retired military and honorably discharged and retired law enforcement, that if they want to take the same type of training as an SRO but not be law enforcement, that we would have more trained people able to enter into our schools and protect our kids. And then the last piece of the puzzle was Chairman Ryan Williams. He's got a bill on the House floor ready to go in January. It's House Bill 1202, that what that does is it gives teachers, principals, administrators the ability to, if they want to carry in our schools and protect our kids, they can, as long as they go through, just like the school safety officers, background checks, fingerprinting, mental health evaluations, take the 40 hours of post-certification to be trained, also take active shooter training to make sure that we have 3 different levels of individuals that are all trained, all ready to go to protect our kids in the event another tragedy happens.
It feels to me, you tell me if I'm reading this wrong, that this is the state providing yet more avenues for local school systems, because what the local school systems, let's just use Davidson County as an example, they tell us that they don't have the personnel, that they're already short in the Metro Nashville Police Department, and based on that shortage, they don't believe that they could, even with the money,
correct,
they don't believe that they could get to the numbers that would provide SROs for elementary schools. It sounds like, short of mandating it, that you're trying to provide every opportunity for Davidson County and other systems around the state to have the individuals that are willing to step forward and say, yes, I will take the training and I will make myself available as an SRO.
That is precisely what we're trying to do, is make sure that we have multiple options for our district to choose from to fulfill the need to protect the students in their schools. Now, the one thing we have said about every one of those bills, Matt, is you got to go through the training. You have to be certified. You got to do the background checks. You got to go through the mental evaluations to make sure that we have quality people that are in our school systems protecting our kids. We cannot allow just anybody with an enhanced carry permit to walk into schools with guns and say, I'm here to protect the kids, or in the event of a shooter, go running to a school with a firearm saying, I have an enhanced carry permit. It would cause absolute chaos in our school system. You saw the video from Covenant. Mm-hmm. Those officers were not worried about strangers being in there with guns. They were looking for a specific individual. Could you imagine if we had just willy-nilly that anybody could carry a gun and patrol the hallways? The pause it would cause with law enforcement trying to identify friend and foe.
Yeah, you have to have structure.
So this is what we're trying to do, is create structure in our schools, right? It's a great word. Structure in our schools to make sure that we have different levels of protection across the state of Tennessee.
Did you consider in your conversations regarding SROs in our school systems, did you consider the mandate?
We did, but you know what? I think that we wanted to provide the ability. You're talking about the bill I'm running, and it's on the House floor today. Right. It's had a unique outcome to this, believe it or not, because Representative Love, who's from Nashville, in committee on Thursday, let it be known that Davidson signed an MOU with the Sheriff's Department.
Huh?
How about that?
And wait, a memorandum of understanding
that they can put SROs in the schools now.
So is the Sheriff's Department, are they able to provide some of the personnel that the Metro Nashville Police Department says that they lack?
That would be up to Chief Drake now, because now, from what I understand, is the MOU has been signed. We're still going to run the bill because the MOU can be revoked tomorrow.
Right.
But we're going to make sure that, hey, if you have the intent to sign this MOU, that you follow through with it. And even if you don't, Metro Nashville schools, law enforcement has the ability to do it.
And just to clarify something you said at the beginning, right now, as the rules are today, that you have to be a police officer, an active police officer, in order to act as an SRO, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And this would open up the ability for retired officers or other retired individuals, that military individuals, to come forward, go through training, and to present themselves as SROs.
Including teachers, principals, and administrators.
No, I think it's a great bill, and it's running today.
We got Tim Rudd's bill about the law enforcement and the military, and Ryan Williams' bill is already on the House floor, ready for January.
There's another piece of legislation that I think is pretty positive, that is obviously coming against the Senate blockade. I'll say that. I mean, I don't mean that as loaded language. That's just what it feels like it is. But the fire alarm bill. And that's Leader Lamberth's bill, right?
Yes.
What is your understanding about the fire alarm bill and what it would do?
So what it does is, and we all grew up with it, fire alarm goes off, everybody lines up at the door, teacher goes to the back, make sure they're the last one out of the room, make sure everybody leaves, and the children, upon giving the command, open the door, walk out in the hallway, and they have an assigned route that they take.
Right.
What we want to do is, when your fire alarm goes off, if all you have is a fire alarm, then you pause. Is it a fire? Is there smoke? Give someone the ability to investigate the alarm. Because when you pull the alarm, everybody knows which one it is. Run to there and find out, one, is it a horrible prank? Or is there something going on? Or pause and, do you hear gunfire? We see the video from Covenant, and we believe what happened was the discharge of the bullets, the gunpowder, triggered the fire alarms. Which then the kids responded like they're all trained to do. And unfortunately, as we found out, some of the children that were killed and one of the teachers were responding to that fire alarm as they walked out into the hallway and walked right in front of the shooter. So now we've got to sit there and say, okay, how do we handle this? Do we have is it a different sounding fire alarm that the kids learn? What is it? And so that what Leader Lambert's bill does is it creates a mechanism for schools to come up with, how are they going to be able to identify a fire, from something else?
And you would think that we would have the type of technology that could distinguish between a pulled alarm and an alarm that goes off automatically. And then, I don't know this to be the case, but I would hope that we would perhaps have an ability to distinguish if an alarm goes off automatically. What area of the building is that in? Is there an actual fire, or is it, gun smoke or gun muzzle smoke? And do we have an audio ability to detect gunfire within a school system that could then further alert the teachers of what the actual danger might be?
And that's where, yes, you're 100% right. We do have that technology. It's been shown to me. It's very high tech. We even have the ability to have teachers with necklaces on, like little lanyards that have buttons on them to signal different things. But the premise is that individual has breached the school. That's why you got to have the SROs, the school safety officers, teachers, principals that can stop that individual, the doors, right? The bullet resistant film, the locks, making sure that we keep those people on the outside. And once again, that's why we just can't let anybody with a hands carry permit walk into schools.
One of the other bills that's being carried in the House that's gotten a decent amount of attention, I think it's being pushed by House Majority Leader William Lamberth as well, and that is the requirement that a parent or a guardian authorize the release of autopsy reports. Do you know a lot about this bill, or have you studied up on it at all? And I'm just curious how this got included in the call.
Well, I assume it fit the call because the clerks wouldn't let it run without it. I kind of understand where this is coming from now. I do struggle with this bill because it's not this bill, it's the one after it. What does the next bill limit in public access? Now, I understand there are things about an autopsy that don't need to be out there, right? The pictures and things like that.
And the photos it's my understanding, autopsy photos are already off the table. This would be the autopsy report of children killed by homicide.
And that's where some of us start to struggle with this, is because this is a public document. And when there's an ongoing investigation, public documents should be under the purview of the public just to make sure. Now, if there's names and stuff you want to redact, I understand all that, Social Security numbers. But just to make sure that everything is moving forward in a transparent way, we really have to be careful. And like I said to some people about this bill may seem not that big of a deal. But if you start looking at government, it's the fourth or fifth bill from now. What else are we restricting from government view, people view?
As emotional as it is when you discuss it, my question, and I've got to call out to House Majority Leader Lamberth, that hopefully we can discuss this at some point this week because it's his bill, but I don't understand how this became front and center regarding the session and why it's so important that we get something done about it now. It would seem it's either related to covenant or it's not. And
well, I think it's 100% because he said in committee when he presented it, it is about the covenant. He's talked to covenant parents. This came from covenant parents. So this bill he wrote on the autopsies is in relationship to covenant parents.
Right. So what happens when you have a situation where a parent or a guardian, and I hate to even bring it up, but the scenario, but it happens where a parent or a guardian kills their own children. And so then a parent or a guardian can authorize the release of those autopsy reports, and I would think those autopsy reports would be in the. I understand that it's distasteful to discuss or to think about, but there are instances where it is in the public interest that these be made available to the public, and I don't understand why it's so important more broadly that we do this unless we're doing it for a specific circumstance in a specific situation, and I don't know that it's the job of the special session to pass legislation based on this specific instance that will cover the entire state of Tennessee for the rest of history.
And that is a keen observation you've made there, and that's some of the questions that we've raised on this to the leader and other people about. We have to be very careful moving forward. This bill has rule promulgation in it, so it's going to wind up at government operations where they're going to have to come out and say, here are the circumstances when you cannot hide this detail, and here are the circumstances when you can.
Well, and once again, autopsy reports are by their very nature. I don't care who you're talking about. That you're talking about somebody that's dead, and so it's going to be emotional for the individuals that know that person or based on the circumstances surrounding the death of that person.
Correct.
It's always going to be emotional, but that doesn't mean. When the government starts shielding information from the general public, we've got to be very, very careful about where we allow that to go, which is kind of where you started in this conversation.
Yeah, you have to tread very, very carefully where you're going because, like I said, I've been up here for 5 years, and I've seen a bill that comes forward, and it doesn't seem that bad, but then you get 3 bills later, and it gets really restrictive, and then you start going, wait, how'd this happen?
And you chart it back to
and there you go.
Yeah. Thank you for stopping by today. I know you've got a 1 o'clock. I appreciate you, and keep us informed.